Madison Kiss presenting on women in religious leadership, more specifically, women as priests in the Catholic Church. The starting question is, should the Church be an example and anchor for the thousands of years before women's rights became popular? Or should the Church start using societal norms and transitioning to a view of acceptance towards women in religious leadership? Women have started just to climb up the leadership ladder, and they take more power in important roles within the Church. From decades before to present day, women have vigorously been oppressed by males in power who did not support their views or give them opportunities for any forms of leadership. So yes, the Church needs to broaden their view of women and who is eligible for priesthood because, one, and most importantly, gender should not be a factor in the decision. It should be the mindset and the traits that this person holds to become a priest, not their gender. Second, the discrimination against women in the workplace or in the process of becoming a priest is medieval, and it should not be in cycle for today. And lastly, the different ideas in discussion, which would be supplied by women, would bring in a diversity of thought that is very well needed in the Church at this moment. Next, the main goal or objective of a priest is to serve the people and be a person of God. After a man or a woman is baptized, they lose the distinction between man and woman and become a child of God instead. Now, their main sole purpose is to serve God and on earth as his followers, and they're basically clean from sin. It is necessary for the Church to leave past creations such as a bias against women in the past and adapt itself to the new world in which we live in today. The long-standing bias that is still prevalent in the Church needs to be abolished. This idea that women need to be discriminated against when becoming in positions of religious leadership should be taken out of creation. The system of discrimination against women is utterly unacceptable, especially in a religious position such as restricting women from becoming priests. Women have been able to basically morph into these self-reliant humans, which is a big change from the past 100 years, and should not be discriminated against in any scenario, since they're considered to be equal to men now, which is different, very especially from the time that the Bible was written, which is the only reason why the Church would be hesitant to accepting women into leadership. Next, there are many different views on this controversial subject of the Church, but at the end of the day, gender should take no precedent over the thoughtfulness of ideas that are brought by any gender. For example, in chapter 1, Timothy, within the Bible, it says that I will not allow a woman to teach or hold authority over a man in the Church. And this source is from Women Should Never Be Ordained as Catholic Priests, which is one of the sources from my outline. And basically this is saying that, well, exactly that. No woman should be allowed to teach or hold authority over a man in the Church, which is a very, very, very medieval thought and is not present at all in present day. The next is, in Christ there is either nor distinction between male or female, which is also from the same source. And it shows that there can be two different sides to this argument. One saying that, yes, no woman can teach a man or hold authority over a man in the Church, but also at the same time, in Christ there is no distinction between male and female. So there are definitely two different ideas to this controversial topic. One Catholic social teaching, under the topic of solidarity, states that we are one human family, whatever our national, racial, ethnic, economic, and ideological differences are, or may be. And priests must have the ability to be caring, compassionate, as well as understanding, approachable, as well as good role models, and provide helpful opinions and advice. But most importantly, they are not linked to a specific gender. As said in the Solidarity CST, there is no distinction between race or ethnic or economic social status, which means that gender should also not be an important topic in becoming a priest. Lastly, when we encourage and promote women in any forms of leadership, we inspire the rest of the world to become a part of the solution. Basically, what this is saying is that, yes, men are an important part of society, but at the same time, you cannot hold back women who've been held back for so many years prior to present day, because it's not part of the common world right now. Author John says that Yes, women will become leaders in the Catholic Church, deacons, priests, bishops, and popes, perhaps sooner than we dare expect. Christ's spirit has not died. She is very active in the body of the church. And I think a very important part of this is the fact that this author used she instead of he, which is a very common distinction between Christ saying that Christ, yes, is male. But by saying she is very active in the body of the church is showing that this author is open to the ideas of women becoming priests. Women should not be banned from becoming ordained Catholic priests because gender should not be an important topic in this conversation. It should be whether they have and hold the traits that are important to become a priest. Sexual identity as well as sexual orientation, discriminating against those two is also very, very medieval and should not be used in present day. People like Ella Baker, Daisy Bates, and Dorothy Height are a few of the many famous women who fought for these women's rights in the civil rights movement. And these strong ladies, they fought so that young women in this new generation and generations to come would have a better life without discrimination. And so by the church discriminating against women in the spot for becoming a priest, it's bringing us back to those times where these strong women had to fight for their rights, and that is unacceptable overall. Next, the religious community would greatly benefit from the inclusion of women as priests because they have a different discussion to bring to the table. I think that sometimes the church may be considered closed-minded because they don't have any ideas from different genders. And at the same time, a Catholic social teaching, a second one, called The Call to Family, Community, and Participation, discusses that people have a right and a duty to participate in society, seeking together the common good and well-being of all, especially the poor and vulnerable. And this is from the 7 Themes of the Catholic Social Teaching document that is listed in one of my cited sources. Basically, this CST says that it is necessary for both genders to be included in these conversations so that no viewpoints will be excluded or forgotten. And I think it's also very important that it's proving that not just men deserve the right to be ordained as priests. If women meet the requirements that a priest needs to have, such as kind, understanding, compassionate, encouraging, honest, and other traits such as those, they should be able to be ordained and not withheld just because of their gender. Sister Simone Campbell, who's in the top right corner, says that it might be easier if they had more contact with strong female leaders who offer a different perspective. Priests could learn from sisters about service, and women can help change the idea of privileged status that many of our ordained priests have. The church too often gives preference to those who give money over those who get left out, and it could be better by giving its voice to those who struggle. We need Francis, not Francis. Basically, this is claiming that that it's important that the church needs to be open to these new ideas that women would bring because they've been in service for so many years that they know what they're doing and they have the correct traits that would make them become priests after their many years of service in the communities. Next, Stanza McGregor is a person who went on a women in leadership journey, and she claims that more men than women, our impact and persuasiveness can be diluted. Women in leadership taught me to be more purposeful and direct in presenting myself. And this is from the source Promoting Women in Leadership Benefits All. And it is exactly that title. Promoting Women in Leadership does benefit everyone. It brings in new ideas and also takes women out from the discriminating past. Sandra here says that in her journey, she learned that she cannot be timid in this world anymore. She must take what she wants, and there's no space for being nervous or scared. Lastly, we look at a women's call for women's involvement and Synod Church's power structure. Basically, this article shows that, again, no women will be allowed to cast a ballot during the Synod, which discusses married priests, ministry for women, and exploitive mining and illegal deforestation of the Amazonian region. So basically, women being rejected from voting in this ballot again shows that society is not really changing that much and that it needs to because women do bring a different and diversity in thought. And I think the ironic part of this is that one of the topics they're discussing is ministry for women, yet women are still not allowed to vote, even though one of the topics is based solely off of their own existence, which is just basically ironic. And lastly, this is a link to the Statement of Ordination of Women, This article discusses the long-lasting traditions of men as priests. It shows that a concept of inferiority and subject status of women is reflected in both the Old and the New Testaments. And basically, this article shows the opposite of what the previous article showed and says that, yes, women have been given enough opportunities in the church and they should be grateful for what have been given. But this is not what women are fighting for. Women are fighting for the ability to be equal to men in the priesthood, which is not what they've been given yet. Women have been serving as, I quote, Christ's ministers in many new ways, in ministries of peace, social justice, theological education, and formal pastoral care of special groups, including leadership in hospital, campus, and prisons. Women now play an increasingly interesting part in the liturgy as lectors and ministers of Holy Communion, end quote. And basically, this is giving excuses of why women should not be fighting for what they want. They're saying that, yes, you've been given enough, just deal with it. And that's just not acceptable yet. And I think that if women do want to become priests, they should be given the opportunity to do that, since they are legible with all these traits that they held from their learning services. And from their ministries of peace and social justice that they have been given, they're able to take traits from there that they've learned have been successful, and they would move them on to priesthood. And so they have been educated enough, and they'll bring new ideas to the table and for how to reform and fix the church, which I think would be very important that priests should have. Lastly, and an overall finishing comment would be, overall, women, they've been given more opportunities within the church, as we've learned from the previous slides, but unfortunately, these options are not sufficient enough. Women want to be ordained as priests, and their gender should not be a deciding factor between their acceptance and their rejection. If a woman possesses all of the necessary traits that a priest must have, then she should be given the same opportunities that the men are given, and she should be able to be ordained as a priest. The end. Thank you for listening.